Hi, welcome back to the Ping Pong Flicks Tidbit. My name is Chris Wall. Today we are going to look into a pop culture phenomenon that is happening right now, and that is Game of Thrones. This is the last season, the episode before the final episode, and it is a doozy for a lot of people. Now, I wanted to keep this basic, so I'm going to go into heavy spoilers, but I'm also going to assume you know of Game of Thrones already. You've seen Game of Thrones, you know all the big moments, you know about the characters that you love and dear hold to your heart. But I also want to compare this to other things in pop culture that has been almost similar in that fan division that we're having right now. Danny's change in character seems such a huge twist in the Game of Thrones fandom, and yet may not be such a huge twist, but a change in the motivation of the character through the story. Now, that almost sounds very familiar in terms of the fandom menace, where Luke Skywalker's change of character was suddenly different from the movies that was from before, that angered a lot of Star Wars fans. Man of Steel was kind of a change. What people are saying, it's a change in character of Superman from the Superman they love, from the Christopher Reeve Supermans, from the comic Supermans. Batman from Batman v Superman, how he kills, that's also different as well. I'm going to look into each and every one of these examples, and I'm going to assume you already know the stories. Man of Steel, when Man of Steel came out, Zack Snyder had plopped Superman into a world that's very realistic, like our own world. He wanted to question what would happen when an alien from another planet with powers like a god, came to our Earth, and how we would react to that, and how that person who is very much grounded, knowing about the dangers of this realistic world, how that would act upon him, and how he would impact the world surrounding him. And so a lot of people didn't care for that. They didn't want to see this character break down. They wanted him to come down here, save a cat out of a tree, be all smiley, and just have the world accept him for what he is. That was not the movie that Zack wanted to create. Now, people would say this is subverting the expectations of the character, not the story, because this is an origin story. This is an origin story from birth to how he got to become Superman and how he gets to meet Batman. Because the character of Superman and the character of Batman is so interestingly one-sided that for a lot of the general audience, I guess when they grew up, they only know of Christopher Reeve Superman and Tim Burton's Batman. But yet at the same time, their arguments for the character of Superman in Man of Steel doesn't quite hold up, as you do see Superman actually killing a depowered Zod in Superman 2, much like he kills Zod in Man of Steel, except in Man of Steel he has a feeling of anguish. Zack Snyder wanted to show the reason why Superman doesn't kill is because he must have had killed before, which is also true in the comics, where he actually does kill Zod in the comics as well. Batman also does kill. He does kill in the comics as well. He does kill in Tim Burton with an evilish, devilish grin. And so that for people who dismiss Batman v Superman, Man of Steel for these excuses is not really correct, because that they're subverting in an expectation that the Superman and Batman should be their Christopher Reeve or their Tim Burton or Michael Keaton Batman, yet those characters have done the exact same thing as the characters that Zack Snyder had brought. And I would like to also argue that Superman, Christopher Reeve Superman, does occupy the space of Man of Steel Superman, just that the world around him is different, and his character it changes and gets impacted by the realities that are around him. Star Wars is a huge property. Star Wars is a giant fandom. There's huge. It rivals as much as Star Trek, and we can debate about that, but it is a gigantic franchise. And to make it even more gigantic is the people that follow them, and how much it's very much impacted society. There is a lot of protectiveness in Star Wars, especially because this is one story. It started from the original sequel, and then they told the prequel trilogy, and now the new trilogy that's coming out. But something happened along the way. As we know, from 1 through 6, it's pretty much a single story. Yet, even though we could also argue that elements from the prequel trilogy weren't something that fans of the original trilogy were happy with, but now have come to kind of accept it after the debacle that happened in Episode 8. Episode 7 was an interesting story because J.J. Abrams did his best to service the fans, service Star Wars fans, the fans that will come back and watch this movie over and over and over. They are here as part of the franchise. They have an identity formed by all these other movies coming before it. It's a singular story, and they're following their love for these characters all the way through Episode 7. Now, when Episode 8 came out, it seems to that Rian Johnson wanted to subvert expectations from the movie from before, angering a lot of fans, disappointing a lot of fans, to the point that people are writing off Star Wars at this moment. I don't know how much they are writing off Star Wars, but if Solo is any indication, it's not going well. But the hope is that J.J. Abrams is coming back for Episode 9, and so hopefully people are hoping that he will fix whatever Episode 8 has done. Episode 8 was Rian Johnson's vision, though, and we have to kind of respect that in a way that he went with what he wanted to create. Now, the difficulty part in understanding the Episode 8 is the fact that the vision of this entire arc was from the original and the prequel trilogies. It was from the fans of those trilogies, and ultimately the fans that came at Episode 7. In Episode 7, we were introduced to Rey and Finn and Poe, these new characters, but yet being involved with the older characters, the love for the older characters from before. Even hinting at Luke Skywalker being some kind of savior, just like how fans expected from before. So when it came to Episode 8 and Luke became a hermit who distanced himself from the rest of the universe, from the rest of the galaxies, didn't want anything to do with it, didn't even want to train Rey, he totally abandoned hope for Kylo and such, which goes against his character that was from 30 years ago. Now, there's arguments on one side where you're not the same person 30 years later, which is undoubtedly true, and it's possible that he has changed his character from then to that time. We can debate that all the time. If you are a Game of Thrones fan, and if you are even a Daenerys or Khaleesi fan, Dany's fan, you may or may not have been disappointed by what has happened in the previous episode. As you all know, she totally becomes a mad queen. She hears the bells of surrender, but instead of backing down, she goes out and destroys King's Landing, burns them all, kills everyone, shocking fans around the world. This is a difficult one because I see both sides of this, and I can totally see that both sides could be right and wrong. But the argument that this is a total abandonment of her character, because people have seen her as a heroic figure, that she will not kill innocent people, and she hasn't killed innocent women and children until now, until this single moment. She has burned and killed a lot of people, but granted, they're like soldiers, slave masters, outrightly kind of evil people, if you will. But the other argument is that she has always supposed to be this. Dany was supposed to be this way. She has always mentioned taking the Iron Throne with fire and blood. She'll burn them all. You see the vision where she has ashes around the Iron Throne area. It seems like this is what they're alluding to. But also, there is a third argument that is very compelling, and that is that they know this will come to pass, but it's too soon. They should have alluded to it more. But it's interesting for us to talk about this because it's what's expected, what's being seen on television. For people who are rooting for her, they seem to only retain the parts that made her a hero. They're people who know that what she's going to become, retain the parts that see her going to be a mad queen. People retain what they want to retain in order to support their character that they love and hold dear to their hearts. And that is the reason why pop culture and fandom is so interesting, because even though these stories are respectfully the art of the artist and the writers, they are doing their story, and we have no other choice but to follow along, but to listen and to watch along with them without having a little bit of say in what's supposed to happen. So when it comes to pop culture and fandom, it seems like for people on one side or the other, we're trying to really keep closer to the expectations that we've wanted for these characters. We only retain what we love about them. We only retain what we understand about them. For Superman, we've retained that he's always smiled. He's always saving people. People love him. He loves them back. There is nothing. He's not murderous. He doesn't kill. Batman doesn't kill. Batman's a hero for the children and things like that. This is what we retain of these characters. What people, fans, want to retain for these characters. So when Zack Snyder comes in and either shows you the truth, shows you things that you have forgotten in the characters that you've loved and you've seen before do, it seemingly is like a subverting of expectations when it's really not. Daenerys has done those things. She has killed people, and they took it to a moment where she totally snapped, totally went off the rails, and starts killing women and children, killing the entire city. This is what she wanted to do, and she's alluded to this, but we decided to retain only the parts that made her like a hero. But there's still that argument that it could have been fleshed out better. Luke Skywalker, on the hand, I believe, is a total change in character, a total reinvention of a story within a story that should not have happened if Kathleen Kennedy had let J.J. Abrams envision the entire third trilogy act. And we could also argue and debate about that. But it is an interesting story by itself, but I don't think it actually fits within this Star Wars franchise. That is the discussion I wanted to do. Let me know what your thoughts are about creators subverting expectations, or should they be servicing the fans? Which one do you prefer? And do you agree with me on Game of Thrones, The Last Jedi, Man of Steel, and BVS? Let me know down in the comments below. Let's have a discussion about it. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.